Hi everybody, Chris here from Truly Holistic. Now in this video I'm going to talk about the process of fermentation, and I've talked about this before, but like everything that we're learning about here at Truly Holistic, not only as the clients but myself as a healer and that's a special thing to take note of, is that it doesn't matter what we do in our life, we always want to be growing, we want to be evolving, we want to be changing. And also the acceptance that you're never mastered anything, there's always something to learn. And that's something I have here at Truly Holistic as the healer, the practitioner, with the client, is that I'm jotting down notes as we go along because it's a learning opportunity. We're directly connected to a higher intelligence or consciousness that's bringing us through information that is, some of it's just brand new information that we've never, we're rediscovering, because this is a connection to self. So it's always been there. It's just about having the channel and the connection to let that information come through. So some of the information that comes through for clients and their sessions and what we need to do for them, some of it's just brand new to me at the same time. So the client as well as myself are having an for the very first time, which is always exciting. And I can't wait to get in and start working on people at the start of a week or every day, because we just don't know what's going to come through. And I think that's the beauty of it. There's no absolutes, and everything is changing. Everything's flowing and changing all the time. So you got to look at things in a different way every day. If you create the space for yourself to do that, right, and don't limit yourself, is a big key in doing that. So this has evolved itself. The idea of fermentation, this process, it creates a microbial activity to kind of create issues, okay? And one thing we must say about microbes, we hear it all the time that, there is more microbial genetic material like DNA and also cells than there are human cells and human genetic material and DNA. So we're in a symbiotic relationship with microbes, and some people may say we're a farmer of microbes. So the way that I look at this process of microbial activity is we need to get along, right? Us as the human, as well as the microbes, and also importantly to note that we know that our true identity is just not human. We're a projection of consciousness, okay? Quantum physics is that the idea that reality is a physical reality is just an illusion, because it's our brain that decodes the information of the field, the vibration frequency, to flip it into a form that we see through our duality eyes as physical. So we are just a projection of consciousness. So is everything in this reality, including microbes. Okay, and I've learned a lot about that aspect of microbes as well, which I'm going to discuss with you in this video. So we're going to include this quantum theory or aspect, and it's not just theory anymore, because we're bringing it into the charts. We're using that information to help people heal, and we're seeing results. And that's proof in the pudding. So there's a lot of people out there that talk about a lot of this stuff, like the theory involved in regards to quantum physics, and people like David Icke and David Wilcock talking about all this stuff. But here at True Holistic, we're using this information, we're putting it into the charts in regards to a healing modality, and we're getting results. Okay, there's proof in the pudding. It's just not theory. We're testing out, and we're creating a new evolvement in regards to our knowing and understanding of reality, and it's very exciting. And and looking at the process of this relationship between ourselves and the microbes as well is vital to our vitality and our health. Not just infections, but the origins of illness and disease is as extreme as cancer too. It all comes down to this. So We call it fermentation. Obviously, there are processes in regards to making beer, for example, is a fermentation, right? A medium, so they have a yeast, they feed it with sugar, which is the medium to create more numbers of that yeast or that microbial activity to then create that sugar into alcohol. And we know byproducts of that process is that these alcohol produced, these acids secreted by the microbes, and also there's carbonation, right? So the bubbles that occur within it. Same thing when we're making kombucha or sauerkraut or fermented vegetables to increase friendly microbes, friendly bacteria, friendly yeasts, and when you eat that, then it helps to repopulate the colony of the microbes within your gut and in the body. So, but that's more on a positive note, right? Of looking at friendly microbes, and when we say the word friendly, we mean working with and for the anatomy and the physiology of that part of the body, okay? We also hear the terminology of pathogenic microbe, which means against that anatomy, against the physiology, functioning the right way, which we essentially call the bad guys, right? Beneficial, good guys, pathogenic, bad guys. Now, science we like to label everything. As a human, we like to label everything. When it comes to energy and consciousness at the quantum level, they don't care about labels. It's nothing about labels. It's just about a feeling. Okay, we call, where we want to send to is love. We put the label of love, but it's a feeling. Love is a feeling, right? So we can kind of be directed on a path we don't really go to. One to go to if we run with labels. We need to run with the feeling of thing. As I say to people, we need to feel our way through life, not overthink and project stuff. We just need to go with the flow, ride the wave, so to speak. So, as I say, scientists and so on, they'll look under microscopes, they'll look at microbes and they'll start to label them, give them a scientific name or a Latin name, and they'll differentiate which ones are friendly and which are pathogenic, right? But what we're finding here is that microbes are polymorphic. They can change their form depending on the energy or the consciousness they're connected to. Because as I say, we're a projection. It's just an illusion, optical illusion, that we're really in a physical reality. We're just a projection of consciousness from the field, the quantum field expressing itself. Same with microbes. So depending on the environment that microbe is given, it will affect its consciousness, and therefore the projection from the consciousness into that physical microbe will change. So, a pathogenic microbe and a beneficial microbe can be the same microbe, originating at the same consciousness, just depends on the environment it's given. And there is a universal law that all consciousness must evolve. So it really comes down to the environment we create in that area of the body, depending on how that microbe will behave. And we're going to talk about that. So when I'm talking about fermentation, I'm talking about microbial activity in the body. And as I say, it depends on, let's use the example of the gut, okay? And if you're living out your life where you're really being dictated by reality in front of you, and you start to build up stress, right? Maybe you're in a problematic relationship, maybe you're in a job that's too stressful and you don't like it. It lowers your vibration and frequency, and it lowers the vibration and frequency of the gut. Now, the microbes that are originally working for you and with that anatomy and physiology of the gut will then all of a sudden have a depletion of energy. And they know, like every consciousness, it needs energy to evolve itself. So what it will do, it will realize that it doesn't have the energy to evolve itself, and it will start to feed on your own energy, our body's energy, and become parasitic in its nature and its behavior, which we call now pathogenic. So it all starts from obviously the energy, right? Our interaction with the reality. And when we see the world and reality in a physical nature, we start to create boundaries or barriers like the inside part of our body, and then there's a skin here that blocks in and out. But we're just a projection of consciousness, and this is the field. So really, outside, inside of the body is the same. There's no barrier. And there's really no barrier between reality in front of us and our interface, the human body as well. That's why we have things like epigenetics and nutrigenomics, where they're looking at your genes or your genetic material have got an on and off switch, and it depends on the environment that turns a switch on or turns it off, a gene on or gene off. So there's an interaction between you and life and your reality, right? And what you create, the space that you create for yourself. Is it stress state? Are you in a peaceful state? And it has an effect on how everything works. So there's no barrier between you and reality. You're one, right? So let's say lower vibration in the gut. So therefore, that microbe has to adapt to keep evolving itself, its consciousness, and it will start to feed on your energy. We call that an infection. Okay, an infection, where a microbe changes from a behavior being beneficial, working with that anatomy of physiology, to then being pathogenic, working against it, because it's taking its energy, taking your energy in that area. So what happens there, and sometimes it can be a medium, sometimes it can be eating too much sugar. It can be necrotic tissue in the body too that feeds that process. Okay, so we look at all these things in the body with a lot of illness or dis-ease or infection issues with clients. And now, byproducts of that fermentation process or microbial activity that has changed because of the microbe's behavior that's changed is pH balance, okay? Whether the environment becomes anaerobic, which means a lack of oxygen. And what science shows is that there are microbes that do well in an anaerobic environment, an environment lacking oxygen. They're usually pathogenic in nature. That's why we get the theory that when an environment becomes anaerobic or becomes too acidic, it's a perfect environment for illness and disease to be created, including cancer. And that's what we're finding. But it's out of this process of fermentation. The byproduct of that is that these microbes proliferate while behaving in a pathogenic manner, feeding on your energy, and they secrete acids. Okay? That's what happens. That's what erodes your enamel of your teeth, right? The dentin in the enamel of your teeth is that you eat food and you secrete saliva. And saliva is that you need that saliva to protect the teeth, right? It protects the enamel, the dentin of the teeth, right? Because your saliva should be alkaline. Because when we normally eat, the environment of the mouth becomes very acidic, and that's what actually what breaks down your structure of your teeth. And then the saliva comes into to saliva all over the teeth. One, to obviously break down the food with the enzyme of amylase to break down carbohydrates. So if you chew starchy foods for long enough, you'll feel a sweetness because the amylase is starting to break it down into simple sugars. But the alkaline aspect of the saliva will protect your teeth. So pH is very important, right? So there are certain areas of the body that you need to be very acidic, including the stomach. But we're not talking about stomach, we're talking here about the gut and this process. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at remove fermentation, right? Looking at the medium that's feeding that process. We're looking at byproducts of that process, which is, as I say, quite often if the microbe becomes pathogenic and everything's not going in your favor in regards to the example that we're using here at the gut, all of a sudden the pH will become more acidic. The environment will have less oxygen, more carbonation, which is carbon dioxide. As I said, process of fermentation is carbonation gets created, right? Again, another byproduct of proliferation of microbes, whether that be bacteria, whether that be yeast, whether that be mold, whether that be fungus. And, a lot of the times we always hear, mold's bad for us, fungus is bad for us, but they still work symbiotically with our body. But again, it all comes down to the environment we allow it, because it will change its behavior of that microbe. Okay. So what we do is we bring balance to the pH in that area. We remove the fermentation. We activate oxygen back into that area. So we change the environment from an anaerobic environment, lacking oxygen, into an aerobic environment, which helps to keep all the microbes in check, so in a beneficial behaviour. It's a bit of the analogy like of if the microbes are not getting the energy to evolve themselves, they go on strike. Okay, and then when we bring oxygen back in, all these things back in, they need to get back to work, right? And we work together symbiotically. Okay, that's why, a simple thing of just taking antibiotics is causing a lot of damage, because we're just throwing a bomb in there to destroy bacteria, but the terrain and the environment is not being changed. Okay, and that's why we see a lot of people get reoccurring infections in the same area if they're using that modality of just taking antibiotics, right? Okay, so let's get to another byproduct of fermentation, which I see a lot of. This is a big part of dis-ease. It's a manifestation of degeneration, and it's called calcification. Okay, when the body turns to stone, we see that with the elderly, right? And the elderly become toxic year after year because they're accumulating stuff. We may say that toxicity is stuff in the food supply or our water supply, but it can mean emotions, toxic emotions that we've suppressed or not knowing how to express them in the right manner. Can mean a number of things. Toxicity, again, originates at the quantum level. It's energy, and how it manifests into a physical existence, if we can call it that, depends on that energy again, and that's why we work at that quantum level. We're getting to the root of the problem. So calcification is a big deal because calcification mimics calcium. It's really more of an infection, okay, because it comes from this process of fermentation. It's a byproduct of that. It's a decaying byproduct of it because it creates tissue that is not really your tissue. It's like scar tissue. We keep getting told that within every 7 years everything renews itself. Well, scar tissue doesn't, because it's not your tissue. It's not the same tissue. Same thing with calcification. If you've got an illness or a problem that has pain in it, there will most likely be a calcification component of it that is creating that pain. Again, cancer gets created through this process. I've had a number of people we've been working on in regards to cancer, and some people just want to know how this all got started, because no one can tell them the answer. How did I get here? And why did I get cancer? And we find every time that it's a microbe that has gone rogue. Okay, it's you haven't listened to your body because you've been living life being directed by reality, mind orientated, mind controlled, and you haven't listened to the body, and the body's been communicating to you through symptoms, right? And that's what symptoms are. It's communication. And eventually, if you don't listen and don't give it the time just to maybe change what you're doing, because it's trying to indicate to you, you need to change what you're doing. You're doing too much and not being enough, okay? And that's a big deal too, because a lot of people think, got one life, we've got to do as much as we can. No, it's not about that. It's about beingness. It's about, and in that state of beingness, we can create bliss, we can create love, we can create ease instead of dis-ease that comes from too much doing. And sometimes those symptoms are just trying to tell you, just halt, slow down, stop what you're doing. You need to change what you're doing, okay? Because what you're doing is creating an environment for dis-ease, for fermentation, for this microbial activity to switch around when the odds are not in your favor, and eventually that will lead to a chronic illness or chronic dis-ease, okay? So calcification is a big deal, and we, again, clear that out here at Truly Holistic. So this is a very unique way that we deal with infection, but illness and disease with this analogy, with this idea of the fermentation and the byproducts of it. So we're getting great results. Again, that's why I'm sharing it to you. It's just not a theory. We put it into practice and we see results. Now, the extra thing I want to talk about here, and this is where things have evolved as I was talking to you about at the start, is that, with the aspect of quantum physics, as I said, they say that our idea that we live in a physical reality is just really an optical illusion. because everything is field, it's just vibration and frequency. The brain takes that information, it decodes it, the brain being part of a human, being part of duality, and it flips it into form through our eyes, because I can't see through your eyes, I can only see through mine. And we all are unique, okay? We may hear from science and medicine that we're going to use this principle because everybody has a heart, everybody has a brain, everybody has the same organs and so on. But evidence shows and experience shows that the same modality doesn't work for everybody. Okay, it's clear to see. It's the pink elephant in the room, right? What they don't want to agree on, right? We're actually unique, okay, because we're a projection of our own consciousness. It's not even physical, okay? So we're being hoodwinked to think that we are all the same. We're not. We're not. We're completely different. And we're a projection of our consciousness that exists within that field, okay? Now, if we take that idea that we're a projection of light, projection of consciousness, projection of the field, quantum field expressing itself, okay? And as I said, the microbes are the same thing. So the microbes projection changes depending on the environment, because, as I said, the universal law is that consciousness must evolve. And that's why science finds that pathogenic microbe looks different to the one that's the beneficial one, so they are different microbes. No, they're not different. The environment that changes, the energy that exists within that environment changes what its consciousness needs, so it has to change the behavior to get the energy it needs to continually evolve its consciousness, which will then change its projection of how we see it in this physical reality. Okay? Pretty cool stuff. Okay? But again, it comes down to quantum physics. It comes back to quantum energy. Okay? And this is how we're working and how we're healing with it. And it's pretty cool stuff, pretty exciting stuff. Actually, just today, I was working on a client who wanted to work on their right big toe because they've noticed that they were getting calcification or calcium buildup for years and years and years. And this is something, again, that just doesn't happen overnight. You've got to realize that. Like a lot of illness and disease, it just doesn't happen overnight. This is something there's been a journey into illness that may have been months, may have been years, may have been decades. And there's going to be a journey outside of, or getting back to healing and vitality, or health and vitality of that area. Okay, we've kind of been hoodwinked to think swallow a pill and everything's going to be good, like that, right? You've been hoodwinked, okay? That whole idea of taking a pharmaceutical and numbing the communication, which is a symptom, right? Let's say pain, and hoodwinking into the pain, the problem's gone. Therefore, the pain's gone, the problem's gone. No. You're just blocking that communication. You're numbing that communication network. And if you don't take the pill, then it will just come back, or it may scream louder at you. You're just ignoring it. You're like burying your head in the sand, right? So I was working on this client, right big toe, calcification problem build up for a number of years. And she also mentioned that she felt it might have been affecting her alignment. Because obviously you need your toes to grip on the ground, and it can affect the alignment further up in regards to your pelvis and knees and so on. Because it will affect the way you walk, right, and your gait. And she also noticed that there was less strength in that great toe compared to the rest of the toes because of the calcification in it. So when we looked into it, it told me to ascend the bacteria. So as I say, what we do is we realize that bacteria is behaving pathogenically, so against the anatomy and physiology of that toe, okay, creating a process where calcification and all these other things occur. So we just give it the energy it needs, and when we do that, it drops all agenda to behave pathogenically, and it'll start working along with that anatomy again because it's getting the energy it needs to evolve itself. So that's what we do. And then once we did that, we realized that within that toe and all the tissue of the toe, we can become specific. We can work on the capillaries, so the blood supply coming into that toe, or the nerves, or whatever we want to do. But The next thing, we remove fermentation, okay, which is the process that created that microbe bacteria to become pathogenic. We cleared out the calcification, and as we were doing this, the client felt it all. She felt movement, she felt flow, and when we cleared out the calcification, made that intent, she could feel like there was a blockage in the joint of that big toe that all of a sudden gave way, and she could feel flow. Blood supply actually came back into that toe. Okay, is the instant we made that intent. Okay, now that's proof in the pudding, people. We restored pH balance back into that area, and then we brought oxygen, activation of oxygen in that area to create an environment that not only we're resolving this microbial issue, but we're creating a space or environment that's going to allow it to flourish again. Okay, so she couldn't believe what she was feeling and the change that was occurring just within the session. Okay, and will that be the change that everyone will see? No, and we don't promise that for anybody, because as I say, we're all unique and different. Okay, and some of us are a bit sensitive to the energies, and some are not so much, and that's okay. So it was interesting, and I have many times this happens, and the feedback that I get back in regards to addressing these sorts of issues with the process I'm talking about in this video, and I thought I'd share it with you. I hope you really enjoyed the video too. So if you've got somebody that's got a illness or problem or infection issues, please come and book a session here at Truly Holistic, because really I think I look at this process in a very unique way, but very truthful way, because we're really getting to the root core of the problem at a quantum level, not just working on symptoms, and we can resolve an issue and stop it from getting to a really chronic problem. Obviously, chronic problems will take longer. As I say, there's a journey into that illness, and there's a journey out of that illness back to vitality. And a big part of that journey and that process is you. After all, 30% of the healing is clearing work. 70% is up to you. Creating and holding the space for that healing to continue in that area. Changing habits, changing your behavior, changing the way you see reality. It's all part of that 70% of your healing. You are a big part of your healing. You are. And no one knows you better than yourself and your body. So when you get in tune with that, it's a wonderful thing. Till next time.